Well, good morning. If you will, please open up to Matthew chapter 7. We'll be spending most of our time there this morning. Matthew chapter 7. To our visitors, we want to say thank you for being here with us. We're very appreciative of your presence. And we ask that you stay around so that we can talk, meet and greet, get to stay for class, get to continue to study His Word together. So we're beginning in Matthew chapter 7 this morning. And I want to ask a question, is whenever we talk and think about the most popular verses in the Bible, we see such verses come up as, judge not lest ye be judged. Matthew chapter 7, but that's not where we're spending our time this morning, there. You see such verses as John 3:16, for God so loved the world, He gave His only begotten Son. You see verses like John 11, where it talks about Jesus wept. Verses that have some impact and importance. And another really popular one is Matthew chapter 7 and verse 12. And we know this is the rule, we call this the golden rule. It's widely accepted and understood by the religious world as a moral standard, a moral foundation for things. I don't want to start there, though. Let's go into verse 7 and read from 7 down to 12. It says, ask, and it will be given to you. Seek, and you will find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it will be opened. Oh, what man is there among you, when his son asks for a loaf, will give him a stone? Or if he asks for a fish, will he give him a snake? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will your Father who is in heaven give what is good to those who ask Him? In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. For this is the law and the prophets. Verse 12 again. In everything, therefore, treat people the same way you want them to treat you. It's a moral foundation. That's what everybody accepts this as. It's a basis for how everyone should live and everyone should act. It's a common sense kind of thing. Even our youngest ones understand that if I want to be treated right, I need to show others that same compassion, that same grace, that same mercy. And we see this extreme level of importance in all of this. But I don't want to start there. Let's put a peg here, and we're going to come back to this. Let's go back to verses 7 to 11 and get a little context in all this. And we see through those verses that we build a case for confidence in God that allows for us to act in this law of love. We begin in seeing that He is our Father. You see that in the end of verse 11, it talks about, will your Father who is in heaven give you what is good? God's our Father. We see that He is exalted, that He's in heaven. He's up on the throne, and He's looking down at us, taking care of us with things. We see He's gracious. He wants to give us all these wonderful things if we go and ask. And in this, we see that He is good. When it talks about those, although you are beings of evil and you know how to give good gifts, our God, who is great and good, He gives better gifts. So He is good. We built a case for a confidence in God. And because we have a confidence in God, that gives us a level of compassion towards other people. We don't have to worry about the simple little things. Like our earthly fathers provide for us when we're children, they provide our shelter, our daily food, protection. We don't have to worry about those things, so we can think and act on other things. Our brains don't have to worry about surviving and scavenging. We can continue on and doing other things. With that, our spiritual Father provides for our daily needs in this. So we don't have to think and worry about constantly focusing on our salvation on a daily basis. We have a hope. We have a trust in Him. So we can think about other things, which then should encourage us to go out and share this gracious and glorious God with all other people in the world. And this confidence, shown in the golden rule from us, it brings about this rule or law of love. And you see that at the end of verse 12 when it talks about the law and the prophets. Well, what is the law and the prophets? Well, Jesus begins in Mark 12, verses 30 through 31. And it reads, and you shall love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and all of your strength. And the second is this, that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. There are no greater commands than this. If we're to love our God and trust in him, we're going to give him everything. We're going to give him all our strength. We're going to give him all of our soul, all of our might, everything. We're going to give it all to him. And if we're going to show that level of love and trust in God, we need to do the same to our neighbors. Give them everything. Show them the same levels of grace, mercy, and compassion that our Father shows us. And the man who asked this question goes on and asks Jesus, well, then who is my neighbor? Well, the old law explains under that context of who the neighbor is. They're the poor in the nation. They're your physical brothers and sisters. They are your spiritual brothers and sisters, your fellow Israelites in this. And it's also the aliens in the land, those who wish to identify with the Israelites. There's a lot of people. He's pretty much saying everyone who's in the land here, who wants to stay and be under this protection, that is your neighbor. These are the people you need to be going out and protecting and serving, showing this grace, love, mercy, and compassion to. And Paul further explains it in Romans chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. And it reads, "Owe nothing to anyone except to love one another. For he who loves his neighbor has fulfilled the law. For this you shall not commit adultery, you shall not commit murder, you shall not steal, you shall not covet. And if there is any other commandment, it is summed up in this saying, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love does no wrong to a neighbor, therefore love is the fulfillment of the law." And there we see it. Love is the fulfillment of the law. The golden rule is a law of love. And Jesus further asks, back in Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 9, he says, you love your children, right? You love your flesh and blood. You want to protect them and save them, serve them, give them all of these good things. Why then, if you're going to do that to your physical family, why do you not show those same grace, that same mercy, compassion, and love towards the rest of the world? Why are you not doing that? Well, there's a good reason for this. So we're going to pull up that peg, and it's because there's a misinterpretation that's applied to this verse widely throughout the religious world. Listen, the verse says, treat others the way you want to be treated, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. But a lot of times we hear this version of the verse that says, treat others as they treat you. That's a very different verse. Treat others the way they treat you. It takes the responsibility away from me, the individual, and puts it onto somebody else. It takes away my level of responsibility and turns it into something pretty negative. It becomes a law of reciprocation at this point, not a law of love. It's a law that becomes revenge, not grace, mercy, and compassion. It's saying, I don't want this. Originally, the verse says, I don't want this, so I'm not going to give this. And it turns into, well, somebody did wrong to me, so I'm going to treat them this way. Or, I know how they're going to treat me, so I'm preemptively taking action. Again, revenge, negative lights. But Jesus has come in and painted this in a very positive light. He says it's an action, not a reaction. He says, go out and treat others the way that you want to be treated. Don't wait for them to take the initiative. You show them love. You show them grace, compassion, and mercy. It's all about action of love versus an action of revenge. Actions of grace, mercy, and compassion over revenge. And Luke gives a great version of this in Luke chapter 6, where he talks about the Beatitudes. We'll begin in verse 27. Luke chapter 6 and verse 27. He says, but I say to you, you hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. Whoever hits you on the cheek, offer him the other also. And whoever takes away your coat, do not withhold your shirt from him either. Give to everyone who asks of you. And whoever takes away what is yours, do not demand it back. Treat others the same way you want them to treat you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you expect to receive, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners in order to receive back the same amount. But love your enemies and do good and lend. Expect nothing in return, and your reward will be great, and you will be sons of the Most High, for he himself is kind to ungrateful and evil men. Be merciful as your Father is merciful. He gives two versions of the golden rule in that. So what do we learn about the golden rule in all of this? Well, first we learn that it's proactive. The golden rule, it's active, it's dynamic, it's alive, you're doing things. It's not static, it's not passive, it's not reactive. Jesus is telling us, take the initiative to go out and help others in the world. Don't just avoid trying to hurt them. Show them love. Show them grace and mercy. If you are to call yourselves children of God, you're part of his kingdom, you're showing the characteristics of him. You're not showing the characteristics of the world. And then we see that it's pensive. That's not a common word. Pensive, it means to sit back and to really think, and think deep about what you're saying. Serious thought needs to go into the golden rule and to how you act this out. It's not an impulsive law. It's not something that you just do on the spot and think about on the fly. It's something we need to sit down and think about. Focus on, how do I want to be treated? How do I want my Father to show grace, love, mercy, compassion towards me? How do I show the rest of the world this? What do I want to avoid in all of this? Well, we sang a song in VBS this week, right? About rolling over things. Roll the gospel chariot along. And in it, we talk about lifting people up, not tearing them down. When you come across your brother, we stop and we pick them up. We come across our sister, we stop and pick her up. Come to our neighbor, we stop and pick them up. When we come across a sinner, we stop and we pick them up. But when we come across Satan, we roll right over him, because that's what he's going to do to us. Again, not a lot of reciprocation in that, but we don't want to be treated as sinful with sinful things, right? So we want to roll over those things. We want to push those things out of the way and lift up and bring with us people that need love, mercy, and compassion in all of this. And we see that it's practical. We are called to fill real needs with the golden rule. We're not just to go out and say, as James and John have recorded for us, don't go out and say, go in peace, keep warm and eat your fill. What good does that do to anybody? Giving them positive words, yes, but you're not actively helping them. You become passive and static in this. No, you don't say go in peace, you say come in to my home, come in and be with me. Get warm, share my blanket, share my fire. Here are some of my clothes. Protect yourself. Take care of yourself in this. We don't just say go and eat your fill, we say come in and enjoy my bounty. Share with me. We put a good home-cooked meal in front of them. There's that saying that one of the greatest acts of love is giving somebody a good home-cooked meal. Why is this? Because time and effort go into this. You're showing love. You're investing into this person. When you make a home-cooked meal, you're investing a precious commodity that is time. Time goes into this person, and they see that when you sit down and give them a beautiful meal. Right? Isn't that part of the thing about Thanksgiving? We take all this time to make a wonderful meal together, to sit down with friends and family, to be thankful for things. And there's an understanding of love there, because I've taken all this time out of my life to show thanksgiving to you, to show love towards you in all of this. It's practical. And lastly, we see that it's proven. And we ask, how do we know this works? How do we know that the golden rule is proven in this? Well, Jesus gave us the ultimate example with this. He shows us the harder crux of what this law is about, this law of love is about, when he went up on the cross. That word crux, it means heart or core, but if you go to the Latin, it means cross. Interesting, right? It was on the cross that the Lord provided for our deepest needs. He proved the effectiveness of the golden rule on the cross because he put our interests over his own. Think about how hard that must have been for Jesus to do this. We're told the night before, he's sitting in the garden, praying earnestly, Father, if it's your will, let this cup pass from me. We see that there's anxiety coming on. He's sweating like blood. This is not something easy for him. And then when the time comes, he is scourged. He is beaten to almost the end of his life with this. They spit upon him. They curse at him. They hit him. They take a crown of thorns and they beat it into his head. And then they make him pick up this cross and take it through the entire city and then up a hill. And this cross isn't made of 2x4s. It's not something easy to carry. You've seen railroad ties? How big that wood is? Imagine that kind of wood and how long it has to be. Not only is it driven deep into the ground, but it's holding up very high so people can look out and see the warning that is provided with the cross and with crucifixion. This is not an easy thing to do. And he puts all of that aside because he says, I love you, because I care about you. I want to show you mercy and grace. I want to save you. My Father wants this for you. My Father wants a relationship with you. So I'm going to do all this for you. It's proven on the cross. So in Matthew chapter 7, as a whole, we see that there are three individuals that are mentioned that the golden rule applies to. You notice where its placement in Matthew chapter 7 is. It's almost the center of the chapter because almost everything in Matthew chapter 7 revolves around verse 12. You can go in and apply everything to verse 12 in this. We begin with seeing about me. I didn't realize it was going. Me. We start in chapter 7, verse 1, with judging. Do not be judged, that you will not be judged. For in the way you judge, you will be judged. And by your standard of measure, it will be measured to you. We're going to be held to the same standard as we hold others to. You're going to come in and say, well, this is separate and different. God's going to hold the same standard to you. Where's the love and you showing that to other people? Where's your compassion, your grace, and mercy in that? Try putting yourselves in their shoes. That's what that verse is talking about there. We see forgiveness. When we look at the parable of the unforgiving servant in Matthew chapter 18, it talks about a king has come in, has grabbed a servant who owes him multiple lifetimes worth of debt, and says, I'm going to forgive you of this debt. Go in peace. And that same servant then goes to a fellow servant who owes him just a minute amount of money and says, pay me what you owe me. I need it. The other one says, I can't do that right now, but I promise I'll pay it. And he says, not good enough. That's not good enough. I'm going to take you to prison until you've earned that money back from me in blood. The king hears about that first servant, brings him back in and says, how dare you not show that same grace, compassion, and mercy that I showed you in forgiving you such a large number of this. You're going to take his spot in the prison, and you're going to pay back in blood. We need to show forgiveness in the things we do and when we show people how we act. And he talks about watching our walk, verses 3 through 5. We look at the speck in your eye versus the log or the speck in someone else's eye versus the log in your own eye. Look at what you're doing, because you know what? The speck in someone else's eye might just be the reflection of the log out of your eye. Look at yourself before you begin to look at others. That pensive, go back and being pensive in thought. And then look at verses 13 to 14. It reads, enter through the narrow gate, for the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there are many who enter through it. For the gate is small and the way is narrow that leads to life, and there are few who find it. God has showed us grace, mercy, compassion, and our salvation, and saving us, and having this relationship with us. If we're to treat others the way I want to be treated, if God has treated me this way, why am I not doing those same things to everyone else? Why am I not going out and trying to help as many people come into that narrow gate? If he showed me the way, why am I not showing others that same way? Don't we want to save and bring people together and bring them into the kingdom? Show the way to the narrow gate. That is application to this verse for me. And then we see a thing about others. And you look at verses 15 to 20, you see that Jesus says, everyone is going to see you for what you are. Others are going to see you for what you are. Actions always speak louder than words. People are going to see you by your fruits. So the question is, are you producing good fruits or rotten fruits? Think about the parable of the Good Samaritan. He's an other who treats others the way he would love to be treated. The Samaritan's an outcast. They're called dogs from the Jews. They're not treated the same. They are not considered neighbors of them, but that's how he wants to be treated. He shows this level of grace, of compassion, and mercy towards this Jew who has been beaten and abandoned by the side of the road when two of his own brethren just walk on by, ignoring him and ignoring the fact their neighbor needs help. But the Samaritan comes in and says, and shows grace, compassion, mercy. He tells the innkeeper, here's what I have now, and if I owe any more, I promise to pay it back, and I'm going to come take care of this. But take care of this man. I have no relationship with this man, but take care of this man, because if this was reversed, I would want to be showed this grace and compassion and love in all of this. And then we talk about God, and we see God in the Golden Rule. He talks in verses 7 through 8 about trusting in the Lord, putting your faith and stock in God. We want him. He trusts us, doesn't he? He trusts us with free will to go out, and we're going to act and show what it looks like to be a child of his. We go out and show what it means to be a Christian. He trusts us to do that. So should we not trust in him? And then we look at also forgiveness. It's weird to think, why do I need to forgive God? But how many times have we thought that maybe God's answer was unfair in something? We've said, well, Father, I asked for this promotion at work. Father, I've asked for this situation to become easier or to take it away from me, or that my loved one get better. A lot of times the answer we receive is not the one we want, so we think of it as unfair. And we get angry. We all know plenty of people who've gotten angry at God and walk away from him because they lack forgiveness. If God's going to show us forgiveness, if we want to be treated with forgiveness, with grace, love, and mercy, shouldn't we do the same towards him in things? It's weird to think that we need to sometimes forgive our Father in our hearts for being treated unfairly, but that's human nature. It's human nature to sometimes hold a grudge. So remember forgiveness in your heart with this. And then we see something pretty sober in all of this, a good summary at the end. The consequences of failure to not keeping to the law of love. Chapter 7, verse 21. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father, who is in heaven, will enter. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name cast out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, you who practice lawlessness. That is what happens when we do not really truly live the golden rule, when we do not live a golden life. When we fail to show the same grace, love, compassion, mercy that's been shown to us, when we fail to do that, he says, I do not know you. You fail to show the characteristics of me and of my Father. So how can I know you? How can you be a child of God if you do not reflect those things in your life? Matthew chapter 7, verse 12 teaches a really powerful lesson, really powerful things. It shows us to hold to a law of love. That we're to be initiators and instigators of this. That our relationships, this is how our relationship should function, is this, out of love, grace, mercy, compassion. That it's up to me, not other people, to set this example. It's up to me to show the world how to properly love, how to forgive, how to show grace, mercy, compassion, these characteristics of God. It's up to me to do that. Because beyond what I want others to do to me, I want them to see how I want God to treat me. I want them to see what relationship I have with Him, one of grace and love. I want them to see how God is expected to treat me and me to the rest of the world. So if we expect grace, love, mercy, compassion, even salvation, we need to make sure that is how we are reflecting in our lives. That's how we need to make sure we're living a golden life. Thank you for listening.